Welcome to AirAbility, your regular dose of lead therapy from the shed. And this week is going to be part 4 of my pellet testing series. I know there was only meant to be 2 parts to this series, but due to popular demand, it's back for a 4th and final instalment. And I've been receiving some really good questions from the internet, and I thought a 4th instalment was a good idea because then I could address some of the questions I've been getting from the internet. And as ever, these answers that I'm going to give you is about how I go about it and not necessarily how other people go about it. So it's about using this information and taking things forward in a way that is useful for you. So without any further ado, what are these questions? Here we are. I've got my list of questions. I can't believe that people are actually interested in what I've got to say. Well, here we are. Question number 1. What do I do about purchasing batches of pellets when I find a good pellet? I think what you mean here is how do I go about making sure I get multiple tins from the same batch when I find a good pellet. This is a hard one because when you do it by mail order, unless you ring up, it's basically potluck. So what I do is when I go to a gun shop and I'm trying some new pellets, I buy them and I say, do you have many in stock if these work out for me? And then basically I take them back to AirAbility HQ, shoot them, for a good while, and if they do turn out to be any good, I'm back to the shop as quickly as possible. I'm sorry, there's nothing more scientific than that. Maybe if you're good friends with the shop, they might hold you a sleeve or two long enough for you to go back and collect them if they work out for you. What I will say is I do tend to, when I know a pellet's good for me, I do tend to buy enough sleeves to last me a competition season. Question number 2. What other steps are there when I'm not getting good results from my pellet and I can't get any good results from any pellet that's available? So, yes, we've all been there, and it's how long is a piece of string is the answer to this question. But there are some main things you need to look for when you feel that your pellets aren't working properly. You have to remember it might even be your gun. So first of all, I would chronograph your gun to make sure the feet per second spread of the pellet when you're shooting is reasonable. And I would say if it's 10 or under, that's very good, and I wouldn't think there was anything wrong with the rifle. Then I would move on to other things, such as, could it be clipping the air stripper? Does it even need an air stripper? Is the air stripper making things worse? Is the scope fitted securely? There are all sorts of things like that. Is your rest a secure rest? Is your back bag nice and tight? Are you not moving on the shot? Like I say, the list of things that can go wrong are endless. But I had a rifle once where I knew that the barrel wasn't the best. I went through about 7,000 shots. One by one I took away all the other variables until I could actually identify that I thought it was the barrel that wasn't good. And what happened then was, once I finally made the decision to change the barrel, and you've got to be careful because changing the barrels is an expensive option. I changed the barrel, I put the new barrel in, and from the first 5 shots you could see that I did have a problem with a barrel. What I will say is, out of all the guns I've ever had, I've only ever had that gun that's had a problem with the barrel. Usually, if your gun won't shoot any pellet, it's down to mechanical issues such as the regulator, etc., not releasing the air correctly so the pellet comes out the barrel at a consistent speed. Also, try and buy the best pellets that you can afford, because on the whole, if you buy from the top 3 or 4 or 5 brands, you are going to find a pellet that works pretty good for you. And as I said before, once you get that magic pellet, you're straight back to the local airgun shop and buy a couple of sleeves. Question 3. I'm thinking about buying a new brand of pellet. Should I buy several head sizes? Well, the answer from part 1 and part 2 of the series is absolutely yes. I would buy all the available head sizes if you've never used this pellet before, and then pellet test them as I've shown you in parts 1 and 2. What I will say, if you think my gun likes 4.52 in a previous with a previous manufacturer's pellet, it usually bears no resemblance to how your gun's going to perform with a new type of pellet from a new manufacturer. So yes, I would buy all the available pellet sizes, at least one tin, and test them all, and then go back and buy a sleeve of the one that works the best, if that brand does work for you. Here's a very interesting question, and yeah, I think it's a point worth going over, and I tried to express it in my previous videos, but it's very worth having another look at it. I've been asked, what if I buy a certain size of pellets, let's say 4.52 pellets, do I buy a 4.51 pellet sizer? And is that the best pellet sizer to use with those pellets? The answer is no. What the size manufacturers put on the tin is kind of an average size in their interpretation of what the size is. If you measure that, you know, it may differ and there may be some variance in the tin. What I tend to do in my mind is, if I have 3 sizes of pellets that I'm testing, I kind of think of them as small, medium and large. And then I run each of the pellets through all of the pellet sizes I have, all of the pellet sizes, because you never know what combination is going to work. So it is very worth you buying 3 or 4 pellet sizes. If you're shooting in 177, 4.50, 4.51, 4.52 and 4.53. Yes, you may use some of those sizes more than others, but you will definitely know that way which one is the best for the pellet that you find runs well in your gun. Number 5. How often do I clean my barrel? To be honest, it's very rare. I only clean it when I notice a considerable drop in accuracy. And why I don't clean it regularly is, if you give your barrel a really good clean, you've got to let it back in again. And that can take quite a few shots, and you've got to time that right if you're going back into a competition in the near future. But what I do is I put 2 or 3 felt pellets through the barrel before I put it away every time I've shot, and this seems to keep the barrel ticking over nicely for, you know, extended periods of time. Question number 6. Another barrel cleaning question. Do I clean my barrel in between testing different types and batches of pellets? I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this one, but no, I do not clean my barrel in between testing different types of pellets. And why? Well, it's because you'd have to let it back in before you would know whether the pellet was shooting right or not. And you know, pellet testing is time consuming, and honestly I would think that it would actually make pellet testing intolerable if I was you know, had to clean the gun and let it back in every time I changed brand. I have actually done it to see if it made any difference, and for me and the guns that I use, cleaning after every type of pellet that I test really doesn't make any difference. So the answer is, do I clean the barrel in between different types of pellets that I test? The answer is no. Now here's a really good question, number 7. It's on about my preferred pellet, you know, my Barracuda FT, and it's, does the pellet work differently in different temperatures with your gun, and therefore, because the relationship between your pellet and your barrel changes due to temperature, does it make sizing irrelevant? In short, no, it doesn't make sizing irrelevant, because you are making the pellet more consistent. By putting it through a sizer, you are ensuring that any damage or misshapen skirts that have occurred during transit are all ironed out, and they're nice and smooth, and they're all consistent at the consistent size of the pellet sizer you've used. But I will say one thing, and I'm not going to tell you what the temperature is. When the temperature reaches a certain level, I do change the pellet sizer that I use, because yes, the relationship between the barrel and the pellet does change. Here's a good question. What is the difference between sizing a pellet and gauging a pellet? Well, as you can see from the previous episodes, the method I use is sizing a pellet. And what that is with a plunger, I'm forcing the pellet that I'm going to use through a die. A die is a circular hole of a known size. And what that does is it changes microscopically the size of the pellet to ensure all the pellets are the same size. Gauging is a little different. You pass them through a gauge like a sieve, as you can see here in the corner, and what that does is it sorts the pellets into all the different sizes that can occur in a tin of pellets. Why don't I use that method? Quite simply because of the waste. You do find that you waste a lot of pellets, and if sizing works, I know that every pellet I pass through my sizer is pretty much exactly the same. So each to their own, and people have the same level of success with sizing or gauging. It's a matter of choice. Falling out of the last episode, what pellet lubricant do I really use? In competition, I use a very special lubricant. I use unicorn tears, and these are quite difficult to extract, I will give you that, but the effort really is well worth it. So the last question, do I always shoot groups when testing pellets? Well, the answer is no, because benchrest shooters only need one shot. I know that's a bit funny, but there is some genuine reason behind that. When you're doing the more broad testing in the beginning of testing your pellet, you're just trying to see whether the pellet will group, and it's worth taking on further for some more in-depth testing. Now, if you shoot groups all the time, what happens is, to be honest, groups lie to you, because the pellet goes through the same hole and it can start pushing the paper back, and the paper comes back in and makes the hole look smaller than it is. So what I actually do is, when I get to the point that I'm happy with the groups, I then shoot single shots at my practice targets so I can see exactly how consistent the pellets are. Well guys, I hope that was of some interest. I tried to answer the questions as honestly and in a way that would be the most use to as many people as possible. Some of the questions were pretty big, especially what do you do when your rifle's not shooting right. You know, it is a good idea. I know there are some other videos on YouTube that deal with that subject, and it might be a good idea to have a look at them. I hope the internet doesn't turn against me for saying benchrest shooters only need one shot. And anyway, until next time guys, remember, take care and always have a safe backstop. Bye bye.